What's up, Infected, and welcome to the Kwarenteen. Today I'm going to be teaching you how to play a game by the name of A Place in the Sun. Now, if you like what you see in this video and you think it looks interesting and fun, I will have a link up in the corner and down in the description that'll take you directly to the Kickstarter page so you can support that if you'd like. Now, before I get started, I also do have to advise that this is a Kickstarter prototype of the game, so a lot of the art is missing, and some of the artwork and everything is, of course, subject to change. Now, A Place in the Sun is an asymmetrical PvP space-themed game that involves a deck of cards and dials where all four of the different races that you can play as are asymmetrical with varying powers, and you use the little dials and the cards in your deck in different ways depending on the race that you're playing. Now, before you set up a game of A Place in the Sun, each player is going to choose one of the four races. So you have the Arachne, which are like a hive mind insect race. You have planet Rhea, which are basically living plants, sentient plant people. And you have, of course, humans, which are humans. And then you have Mothership Theta, which are essentially, they don't have a home world, but they have a giant fleet that houses the entire race. Now, each race is going to consist of 3 leaders, a deck comprised solely of their color, and then a planet dial that is going to start off on the number 3. Then after each player has chosen a starting race, you will then choose a star that your planet is going to orbit. Now, each star has their own benefits. So you have your deck will be on this edge of your tile. This is where your leaders will sit. Your planet dial will sit here. Your orbital defense will sit here, and your discard pile will be on this side. Now, each one of these stars are different, so when we look at one of the stars, the first thing you're going to look at is this number. Whoever is the lowest number here is going to go first. However, the number you see right here is the amount of power you're going to start with. This here is going to signify how much bonus defense whatever your moon base orbital is going to have. However, some of these are going to have a bonus here. Now, if you look here at the top of this board, this is where all of your defensive orbital units are going to go. So if you have bonus defense here, that means everything in orbit of your planet, which will make sense later, will get an additional bonus. So you will look through here and determine which one of these stars you want. Some of them actually have negatives, so everything in orbit will have 1 less defense. And each one of these are different. Now you're ready to play. Keep in mind, I will do a more detailed description on the different races once I've covered the basics of the game. So in order to set up your tableau, you're going to take your chosen star and your 3 leader cards you will shuffle, and you will place face down in your leader area. Your player deck, you will also shuffle and put face down next to that on the left side of your player board. You will then take your planet dial, make sure it is on the number 3 position, and you will place it in the middle of your player board. Then you will take a number of power tokens equal to the number it shows on your player board. So in this case, I would start with 25 player tokens. Then you will take the top 5 cards from your deck, and that will be your starting hand. However, you are allowed to mulligan this hand once per game, so I can choose to discard all of it, putting it at the bottom of my deck, shuffling my deck, and then drawing the top 5 cards again. However, I'm stuck with this second hand. Once each player has set up their individual playing boards, then you're going to place the remaining power tokens in the middle of the playing field where all the players can reach it. And then you're going to take the event deck and give it a good shuffle. And then you're going to reveal the top 3 of the event cards, which is an alternative way to win. After you're set up and ready to go, the playing field should look something similar to this. However, this is an under-exaggeration because you will be having cards that will be played from the top of your player board out from each one of the players. So you're going to want a little more room than this, but this is kind of an exaggeration of an idea of what your playing field should look like. Now let's look at the general makeup of a card. So you have a symbol up here which shows the type of card it is. The symbol you see in the top left corner is generally a faction-specific symbol. You have, of course, the name, the artwork, and then any abilities the card may have. Now, some of the universal symbols is this symbol means it is an action. You would play this card, do its effect, and then immediately place it into your discard pile. The next style of card has this symbol. Now, this is an orbital. So when we look at a player board, you would place an orbital here in your lunar orbital spot, or you would place it sideways here, coming out from your planet for defensive purposes, which I'll cover momentarily. The number you see here is the defense value of this card. So I would need to do 3 damage to this card in order to destroy it. It should be noted that damage in this game is an all or nothing system. You must do all 3 damage, in this case, to this card before the end of your turn in order to kill it. At the end of your turn, any damage that is on this that does not meet or exceed this number would be removed. And lastly, for the card types, you have leadership cards. Now these are generally reserved for the 3 leader cards that you set separate from your deck when setting it up. However, these could wind up in your deck, and I'll explain that later. Now on to some of the card effects. The symbol you see here represents losing power. So in order to use this ability, I would need to take 1 or more power damage. So my personal power supply would have to take this and put it back into the global supply in order to use the ability. However, this symbol would mean you would gain energy. Next up would be this symbol. Now this is a distributable attack. Now you can do however much damage that it says to the number of targets that there are of these symbols. So for example, this has no number, so it just defaults to 1, so I could do 1 damage to 1 target. However, this card could do 1 damage to 2 different targets, or 2 damage to 1, because you can allocate both damage to a single card. However, this card can do 5 damage to a single target. Now on a player's turn, you are required to play a number of cards equal to the number that's shown here. However, some of those cards could also be to reveal leaders. So for example, I have to play 3 cards, so I could take this and play it sideways right here into my orbital slot. I could potentially place it here if I would like as well, so that would be 1 play. Then I could take this and play it here if I wanted as my second play. And then my third play could be to do 5 damage to 1 target. After resolving this, it would then go to my discard pile. Another action you can take on your turn that does count as one of your mandatory plays is you could flip and reveal the top leader of your little leader pile. Now, these leaders would give you a static bonus, or usually an ability that you would get permanently. However, if I did not like this leader, I could discard him, and I can flip over the next card, which would be an additional play. Now, if I didn't like him either, or if I wanted to change it at a later time, I could discard him as well and flip over this card. However, I have no more leaders here. Now, if you ever have to draw cards out of your deck, and there is nothing for you to draw, or you don't have enough cards, you're going to take your discard pile, you would shuffle it, and you would place it face down in your deck, so you're not penalized for burning through your deck. So you have to be very careful when disposing of a leader that you have here, because you may need it later, you may not get it at the time you need. At any time during my turn, I can activate the abilities of any card that I have face up on my field to benefit from the ability. So for example, I could activate this Roach Swarm to do a single damage to a target and gain 1 power into my supply. However, I do need to note that I am not covering the racial abilities for the race. I will cover that after I cover the general gameplay. Now, after you've played your number of cards, you will then draw from your deck back up to your hand of 5 cards. Now, when you do any kind of damage, unless something specifically states, you must do the damage to the outermost card in the player's orbital section. So, a player would have to attack this first, then onto this card, then onto this card, and if there are no cards left, you can target the moon base directly, or you can attack the player's planet directly. For each damage that's done to the player's planet, they will lose a single power token. So if I were to lose 7 damage, then 7 power tokens would go back to the supply. Once a player reaches 0 power tokens, they are eliminated from the game. When there is 1 player remaining, then they are declared the victor. Now, extermination is not the only way to play. The achievement cards that you dealt out in the beginning of the game, you may claim one of them during your turn, provided you've met any of the requirements listed on the bottom. At the end of your turn, if you've claimed a card and there's less than 3 out on the field, you will replace it, and then the next player, if they are able to accomplish one of the 3 cards, they also can claim one, continuing this process. If a player is able to gather 8 achievement points, they automatically win the game. However, if a player were to lose all of their power tokens in the same turn that they accomplished 8 of their achievement tokens or achievement cards, they still would win because achievements triumph over power. Now let's cover how each one of the races play. We'll start with the Arachne. The Arachne, starting at 3, have a couple unique symbols. The symbol on their starting planet is once per round, you can take 3 damage to make your dial increase by 1. So I could make this turn up to 4, so the following turn I would be able to play 4 cards during my turn instead of just 3. Now some of the cards you play can also increase or decrease that dial as well. So if during my round, if I started at 4 and I play this card as one of my 4 cards, this would increase by 1. And then I would play this card, it would decrease this by 1. And then I would continue to maybe play this card, which would decrease it by 1 again. And then I would play this card, which would decrease it yet again by 1. So the following turn, I would only get to play 2 cards. However, there is an additional symbol, which is the larva symbol. Now, if this card is played that has this symbol here, you will look at your planet dial and do whatever it states. So, because my planetary population is low and I played a larva card, I gain an energy. However, when my dial is a little bit higher, if I play a larva card, it would actually decrease my population. Now into Mothership Theta. Now I will cover the racial ability after I've covered some of the cards because it'll make a little bit more sense. Now the first 2 symbols that you see here would mean to increase or decrease the dial when you play these cards respectively. So the auxiliary platform would increase your dial and the generator core would actually decrease your dial. And as you see the symbol here in the middle, as long as I'm at 3 energy, I would gain 1 power because I played a card with that symbol located on it. Now all of Mothership Theta's orbitals do devastating amounts of damage, however, at the expense of your own damage. So in order to do 5 damage to 1 target, I would need to take 3 damage to my own energy in order to activate this card's ability. Now the next symbol is the spacecraft symbol. So when you play this card, you're going to look at your player dial. As you see here, if I play a spacecraft card, I would gain an energy. And then lastly is Mothership Theta's ability. So I can discard 1 card that has this symbol on it, and I could just draw 5 cards. Next up we have Planet Rhea. Now the Planet Rhea ability is you can once per round lower your dial by 1 and just gain 3 energy. Now 2 of the cards, when you play these, you can lower or you can raise your dial by 1 respectively. And lastly, with this symbol, you would look at your planet dial and do whatever it states. So by playing this card, I would gain 1 energy. However, in the 5 position, I would go down by 1, and in the 1 position, I would go up by 1. And lastly, we have humans. Now the human special ability is once per round, you can discard 5 cards and you can decrease or increase your dial by 2. However, I do need to note that this is a Kickstarter prototype, so that it may have a power cost on the final product. There has been a little bit of talk to it, but it does not show on this. Now humanity, unlike the other races, don't get to play cards and just increase and decrease based on symbols here. Most of their cards will talk about the different symbols you see in the corners, such as mobilization, which allows you to play as many additional cards you would like if they have this symbol on it. However, depending on your dial position, the top hat symbol may make you lose energy in the 4 or 5 position. However, in the 1 and the 2 position, you're allowed to discard cards. Now you may be asking, why would you want to discard cards? Well, humanity is unique in the fact that we like to kill each other quite often. So sometimes you may be forced to play a terrorism card, which lowers your dial by 1 and makes you take 3 damage. Or maybe there's corruption that makes you just discard any engineering cards in the top 5 cards of your deck. Or maybe protests, which raises your dial by 1, but you're going to take damage equal to your new dial level. Or maybe just good old-fashioned bureaucracy that slows down progress if you're trying to get new cards into your hand. Now with each of the 4 races, they all play completely different. You have Mothership Theta that can dish out a metric ton of damage, but at the cost of their own life. Then you have Planet Rhea, which have some of the strongest defensive units in the game and are an incredibly powerful nut to crack. Now Planet Arachne usually will have the most things out on the field, making them very difficult to cut through to reach their home planet. And lastly, you have the humans, which can dish out some of the highest damage in the game, but they constantly struggle with being the only race that a large portion of their deck are negative cards. So the humans are all about hand management. And that is how you play A Place in the Sun. Now if you like what you see here, I'll have a link, of course, up in the corner and down in the description that'll take you directly to the Kickstarter. You can support the project. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video. I'll see you guys next time in the Quarantine.